Welcome to Learn Commerce PU online classes. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe our YouTube channel for all the updates.
Welcome to our second PU Computer Science online classes. In last class, we already learned some important topic, that is about our some differences of about our computerized data processing, manual data processing, and also we can say about data processing cycle and some of the meaning of the file, tables and entity, domains, record, row, tuple, field, attribute and some data type of the DBMS. So integer, character field or string field here, currency field, date field, or we can say about our memo data type, logical data type here. So each and everything we already know what are the data types going to use in our database management system, that is called as the DBMS. So now let's see next important topic about our DBMS. The full form of the DBMS is the database management system, and we already completed by using table, the database and the vendor, seller. So SQL Server, Microsoft, Oracle only, DB2, IBM International Business Machine, database 2, MySQL, Oracle, Sybase, SAP. So this is just only the table for your knowledge or the example about our database management system. Now again and again I am telling database management system or DBMS. Now what about this one? What is this? So here we can say that the DBMS is software, and we know the meaning of the software, set of instructions that makes the computer to perform some task. And we know the types also, system, application, software here. So just I am not going to tell maybe the application or system software here, just only I am going to start. Just the first thing is DBMS, database management system, is a software set of instructions that makes the computer to perform some task here. And such a software, DBMS software, allowing the computer to perform some task, or that allows for the creation of the database. By using the software, DBMS software, we can create the database, define the database, that is called as definition of the database here, and also manipulation of the database. What about the manipulation? Handling and control of the database is called as the manipulation of the database. That means it is a software, and by using such a software we can perform some of the tasks or creation. We can create the database, we can define any information in database here, and also performing some specialized skills like handling and controlling of the database. So the DBMS is actually a tool. It is one kind of technique. It is a tool here, and such tool is using to perform operation on data in the database. Correct? No? Why? Because it's a software. Without this software, is it possible to create? No. That means we can say that it is a technique. It is a software. By using such a software, we can do some other kind of the tasks, creation, definition, manipulation. So we can say here the DBMS is actually a tool, technique, and such a tool or technique is used to perform different kind of operations on data in the database. And such a DBMS also provides protection and security to the database. Without any protection or without doing or without giving any protection here, we are not ready to use any software. Correct? No? So we can say that DBMS not just only it is a tool, we can create, while after the creation we need some protection to the database. So such a software also using, or DBMS also providing the protection as well as the security. What's the data we stored in the database, security to the database. So such DBMS we can say provides the manipulation, or we can say about our data consistency to the multiple users. So what do you mean by data consistency to the multiple users here? The data consistency here we can say that about that means the data consistency means at the same time the two members can use such a data here. So it is called as the data consistency in this case here. So it also providing the data consistency, that means the constant behavior in case of the multiple user. Maybe two member want to access the data, the same data at the same time here. On that time it providing such a concurrent access or done at the same time, that means constant behavior at the same time. So some of the example of a popular DBMS are here. So some example we can take for this software DBMS are the Microsoft Access, okay kya, the Microsoft Access or MySQL kya, or CEBA, Oracle kya, or DBM, that means IBM DB2, all are the example for our database management system. Such database management system only called as the software. That means till here we know some of the explanation about our DBMS. It is a software. Such software is using to make the, that means to create the database, to define the database, to manipulate the database, and such software also providing some protection as well as the security to the database. And some example for the popular DBMS are MySQL, Microsoft Access kya, or CEBA, DBM or IBM DB2 kya. So all are the example for our database management system. Now let's see about some of the goal of the database. So what are the goal or the aim of the database kya? So we can say that the primary goal or aim of the database is to store the information in a way that means first of all maybe in case when you are going to access any data of the database means first of all we need to store the information. So is the way to provide, that means it providing the way to store the information. Not just only the storing of information is the primary goal of the database, as well as retrieve the information. Clear this point here? Now what do you mean by a retrieving of information? The retrieving of information means we are going to access, we are going to consume the data of the database here. So that means all are the primary goal of the database. The first primary goal of the database to store the information here, and after storing the information whenever you want you can retrieve. Meaning of retrieve is accessing the data of the database. So that is both storing as well as retrieving, that is both here efficient. Clear this point here? That is both efficient and the convenient here in case of our database. Now let's see, but because we know that the meaning of the database or some example for our DBMS here. Now the next thing about our features of the database system. So what are the features of the database system here? So some important point we can take for our feature of the database system here. So before going to start the feature of the database system, let's see some explanation why. Because of some disadvantage we started to use the database terms in this case here. So in our database approach in this case here, so the database or we can say the database approach came into existence due to the overcome of the data processing, or we can say file processing system here, because of some disadvantage of the manual file system. We know the disadvantage of the manual file system. It's not possible to store large collection of information. Why? Because whatever the task we are performing in our file processing system by using paper and pencil work system here, we can't collect a large amount of information by using manual file system. Because of this reason we can say here the database approach came into existence due to the overcome the disadvantage or some of the disadvantage of the file processing system here. But such a database or in the database approach here, we can say the data can be stored at a central location. So what do you mean by here? Why? Because now I am not telling about our manual file system. Now we are in the explanation about our database approach here. We know why it was introduced in this case. Why? Because of some disadvantage of the file processing system, we introduced the next approach, that is called as the database approach here. So in database approach, the data is stored at a central location. Now what do you mean by a central location? That means after storing the data, if he or she has an authorized user, then it possible to able to access the data from the database here. But he or she should be an authorized user. It's not possible to everyone to access the data, okay, of the database here. So we can say that in our database approach, the data is located at central location and such data is shared among multiple users. If he or she authorized user, that means they can access the data of the database here. So we can say that means our centralized data management. So the main advantage is the centralized data management. How we are telling about it is equal to the centralized data management means whatever the data we storing in our database approach, such data is shared among multiple users here. Clear this point here? It is stored in central location and such data can be shared among multiple users. Thus the main advantage of the DBMS is the centralized data management. So this centralized nature of the DBMS provides several advantages. So the several advantages are control data redundancy, enforcing data integrity, data sharing, easy of application development, data security, multiple user interface, backup and recovery system here. Clear this point? So we can say that here in case of one DBMS here, it providing several advantages which overcome the limitation of the conventional file processing system. So let's the advantages we already listed, we are going to discuss one by one here. Now the second thing about our controlled data redundancy, we know that during database design, I want to design one new database. That means while going to create a new database, various files are integrated. Many files will get. If he or she authorized person, then that means he can access any data of the database here. So while going to create any new database here or during database design, various files are integrated. We will get many files here and each logical data item stored at central location. Correct? No? Why? Because such person can access any data of the database here. So each logical data item, that means is accessed by any person. But also no need to make. Why? Because whenever you want, you can access such a data here. There is no any restrictions. So no need to make the duplication of the data here. So here we can say that in our database approach, this eliminates, that means the database management system eliminate replicating. Now what do you mean by a replicating in this case here? The meaning of replicating is just we can say about our duplication. No need to make the duplication of the data. Why? Because whenever you want, you can access the data of the database anytime here. So such a DBMS eliminate the replicating, that is called as the duplication of data items. Clear this point here? Duplication of the data items in this case here, and later onwards it also storing the storage space. Why? Because maybe if the data is not possible to get anytime, means we are going to make the duplication of the data in any other place here. But in this case, in our database concept, we can say anytime we can access. If he or she authorized person, then only can access the data of the database here. So no need to make the duplication of the data. Because of this reason, it saves the storage space. Clear this point? Or we can say it ensures the consistency, the constant behavior. It also ensures the consistency, constant behavior, as well as the saves the storage space. So this is about our control data redundancy here. So clear this point here, the first and the second in this case here. And later next one is about enforcing data integrity. So what about enforcing data integrity in our database approach? So in our database approach, the enforcement of or enforcing data integrity is much easier. Clear this point here? Why? Because now we are in concept of about our enforcing data integrity. Why? Because I already said the constraint, the rules or whatever the rules applying to our database, that is about our enforcing data integrity. So in our database approach, enforcement of data integrity is much easier. Now the meaning of data integrity. So the data integrity refers to the validity of the data. Why? Because some data have some validation. Clear this point here? Validity. And if the data is invalid, that means we are not going to use such a data here. You know the difference about the validation and invalid, correct? No, some of the legal data is there, some of the illegal data is there here. So we can say that the meaning of enforcing means it is the constant rules here, but the rules is the data integrity. The meaning of data integrity is the here we can say that the validity of the data here. So such validity of the data can be compromised in number of the ways here. Clear this point? So such data integrity constraint, the meaning of the constraint is the rules of the data approach, the rules of the database concept here. So the data integrity constraint or rules can be enforced or developed by our DBMS. Now what about the DBMS here? Whatever the rules is there, validation, maybe invalid data, validation data, each and everything can be enforced or developed by our DBMS. We know the meaning of the DBMS. It is a software here, and such a software is using for the creation, definition, manipulation of the database, and such a software also providing some protection as well as the security to the data here. And after enforcing data integrity, let's see the next fourth point, that is the data sharing. So what about the data sharing? Why? Because the topic is very simple here. Data sharing, whatever the data we are going to store in database, such can be shared among multiple users, is called as the data sharing. So here we can say that means the data of the database can be shared among multiple users who want, authorized person, if they want to access the data, that means such data is going to share to such person, to those persons here, authorized person, or maybe we can say not only to our multiple user, also called as the application programs. Clear this point here? Also for our application program, that means our, maybe if anyone going to create any application program here, that means the application programmers are going to create the application program here. So such data can be shared among multiple user as well as to the application program. And moreover, new application can be developed by using the same stored data. Maybe in case you want to develop any new application, that means such a new application we can develop by using just the sharing of the data of the database here. So due to shared data here, it possible to satisfy the data requirement of the new application. Why? Because we know that when you are going to create any new application, new database here, that means we can access the data of the database anytime, anywhere, correct? No, in this case here, so that means here, moreover, if you want to create any new database here, that means such data can be accessed in this case here. So due to shared data here, it possible to satisfy the data requirement of the new applications. Whenever any new application want to develop, they can develop by using the same stored data of the database here without any minimal modification. Just by using some little bit modification, we can access the data here, or without having to create any additional data, we can develop here just by with the help of the sharing of the data of the database. We can create new application also. So this is about our data sharing here. And later next one is about our easy of application development here. So what about the easy of application development? We know that the application programmer developing application program. So such application programmers are developed according to their user needs. We are going to develop what's the needs of the user. We are going to develop according to the user needs. In this case we are developing, and not only we are going to develop by using the same stored data the new application, it also the responsibility of the RDBMS provide some other issues like, so some other issues may be the concurrent access. That means here concurrent access means maybe going to access all data of the database at the same time, going to access at the same time here, that is called as the concurrent access, or security and data integrity, everything handled by our RDBMS itself. Clear this point here? That means whatever is there, not just only here the easy of application development, it is the work of the application programmer to develop the application program, and how they are going to develop the application program here according to the need of the users, what the user want. Okay, here according to their needs they are going to develop the application programs here, our application programmers here. And not just only development of the application, they also performing some other issues like maybe the concurrent access here, security, or maybe data integrity, whatever is there they need to develop while going to develop the program, everything handled by our RDBMS. RDBMS full form is the Relational Database Management System. Why? Because there is no any changes here. RDBMS and DBMS both are same. Here just only one letter added, RDBMS. Why? Because the RDBMS Relational Database Management System only. The relational means how we are going to create the database by using the relation. In our relations going to organized in terms of the rows and columns. That means simply all those data going to add by using the table here. So that is called as the RDBMS. Clear this point? So easy of the application development. And later next one is about our data security. So what about the data security? We know that because in our database data is shared among multiple users. So before going to share the data among multiple users, since data is stored centrally, authorized person anytime they want, they can access data of the database. So in our DBMS or database concept, the data is stored centrally. But also the enforcing data integrity constraint is much easier. That means our DBMS also providing protection, I already said, security to the database. So here enforcing the data security constraint, also we can say it very easier task to the RDBMS. Why? Because the RDBMS ensures that only means of access to the database only through an authorized channel only. Clear this point here? What do you mean by a authorized channel? So that means the authorized user only accessing the data of the database here. So this is the first and most important rules of the database. So in this manner it providing security to the database here. So we can say enforcing data security constraint is very easier. Why it is very easier? Why? Because the RDBMS Relational Database Management System ensuring that here the only means of access, whatever accessing of the data is possible through an authorized channel only here. So hence the data security checks, that means the checking of the data here, can be carried out whenever access is attempted whenever any person, authorized person accessing any data of the database here, or maybe any unauthorized person accessing data of the database. On that time only it going to check the data. That means here the checking of the data are possible or going to carried out. So whenever any person going to access of the data of the database here. So in this manner the RDBMS provide some security tool here. So some of the security tool are maybe the user code and password. Why? Because by using the user code and password, the authorized person can access the data of the database. If you know user code and password, on that time any person can authorize, but it also providing some security protection. I already said about this one to the database here. Or maybe finally we can say in our data security, the different checks in this case can be established here to access data of the database here. So different type of checks are going to establish, maybe the addition of the data here, maybe the deletion of the data, or maybe the modification of the data, or for each piece of information in the database. So whatever, maybe when you are going to add the data, the checks going to carried out in this case here, or maybe different type of the checks going to carried out when any person going to access any data of the database. So that is called about our data security here. And after, well, because we already completed the centralized data management, and second thing about our controlled data redundancy, and third one is about our enforcing data integrity, fourth data sharing, next ease of application development, next data security. Now our next point is about our multiple user interface. So we know that in order to meet the need of the various users, why? Because everyone whatever they want, what their requirement, the application programmer should going to develop the application program according to the user needs. So in order to meet the need of the various users, why? Because the different user having different technical knowledge, but also such a DBMS providing different kind of the interfaces. So it providing some interfaces such as the application program interfaces, or maybe query language interfaces, or maybe graphical user interfaces. Why? Because we know that now whatever I said, just only all are the example for the interfaces here. So DBMS providing some of the interfaces, maybe the query language interfaces, or application program interfaces, and the graphical user interfaces. And in our graphical user interfaces, there are two interfaces are there. So such graphical user interfaces containing the first thing about our form style interfaces. And second one is about our menu driven interfaces. So why? Because we are in the concept of multiple user interfaces. So the third interfaces, that is about our example whatever I said now. The third example, graphical user interfaces. Such graphical user interfaces containing two, or it have two types, that is the form style interfaces and menu driven interfaces. So the form style interfaces, that means interact with the user, or each user going to interact with the form in this case here. So whatever it going to tell to display the form, and the user interact using these forms. Just it look like in a form interfaces manner here. But the second thing about our menu-driven interfaces here. So in this case, in case of the menu-driven interfaces, here the user interaction is possible through an menus. So here just by clicking like our Microsoft Word, whatever the menu you want, you can select just by using the click option here, like that only in our multiple user interfaces. Why? Because the example GUI, graphical user interfaces, and such graphical user interfaces containing two types, form style interfaces. Why? Because such a form style display form to the user and user interact using the forms only. And second thing, menu driven interfaces. Why? Because whatever the, in case the user want to use the menu driven interfaces, that means it is possible just by selecting a list of options here. The user interaction is possible by using by using the list of the options, that is known as the menus. And the last thing about our backup and recovery, clear this point here, the backup and recovery. Our RDBMS not just only providing all those advantages one after the another, the final advantage or the features about our database management system, backup and recovery subsystem. So RDBMS also responsible for backup and recovery subsystem, and also it also providing some responsible, that means the hardware and the software failures. It also taking some of the responsibility whenever the hardware and software going to fail in this case here. So all are the responsibility are just get by our DBMS architecture, or we can say as the database management system. So about why, because we already know some of the DBMS database management system, and later next one the goal of the DBMS, and later the feature of the database management system. Totally 8 points are there. So this is about our feature of the database system. Thank you.